Most Singaporeans think SERS is already messy. Just look at Ang Mo Kio residents had to top up just to get a same size flat. Stress, petitions, and even parliament questions. Now imagine something even trickier, VERS. It's meant to solve lease decay, but what happens when your flat only have 20 years lease left and the payout is just a fraction of the new home's price? Hi, I'm Caleb, a Singapore real estate agent. For 9 years, I've helped families navigate policies like SERS, BTO rules, resale housing, and even CPF housing refunds. So I know how these schemes really play out on the ground. Will residents need to top up hundreds of thousands of dollars? Maybe, maybe not, we're not sure right now. Will neighbors clash in voting deadlocks? That's one possibility. And can the government even supply enough replacement flats if multiple estates opt in at the same time? In this video, I'll break down what VERS really is, how is it different from SERS, and what went wrong at Ang Mo Kio's SERS previously, and the hidden challenge nobody's talking about. Stick with me to the end because this could affect not just today's homeowner, but every Singaporean planning for the future of their HDB. So what exactly is this VERS? So VERS simply means it's a voluntary en bloc redevelopment scheme. So it's specifically only for buildings that is 70 years and above. So meaning to say that their lease only left about 20 to 30 years itself. So the purpose at the end of the day is so that the government can take back this plot of land, then start rebuilding for the next generation itself. Because imagine today, right now, if the government have about 20 to 30 different blocks all expiring at the same time, it will be quite a headache for them to rehouse different people at the end of the day. And at the end of the day, when it is also to address the lease decay issue and also the falling value of old flats also. So meaning to say that at the end of the day, it's true that when you live until the end of the lease of the property, the property is returned back to the government. But they want to do it step by step such that they compensate you earlier for you to move out, and then they can start rebuilding this plot of land and so on and so forth instead of doing it all at once. So what is SERS? SERS is what is currently right now we are doing. It is Selective En bloc Redevelopment Scheme, which means to say that the government selects all HDB blocks and redevelop them per se. Meaning to say they take this plot of land, redevelop for commercial purposes or new HDB purposes itself. So the homeowners will be paid market value itself, and they also have the rehousing benefits whereby they get to select a new flat nearby with a fresh 99 years lease, and they have 30,000 grant to help them to buy a new flat. So it's kind of like striking a lottery, because when you stay in the new flat and then next time when you sell, the prices will be a lot higher because the flat lease will be 95 years. About only 5% of HDBs qualify. The last project that was done is in 2022 in Ang Mo Kio Avenue 3, and 600 households were affected by it. And right now in 2025, the minister mentioned that there will be no more new projects being planned for SERS. The difference at the end of the day, it's what SERS is a compulsory thing, but for VERS, it's a voluntary thing. Because for SERS, they will compensate you based on full market value compensation, and there is another possibility of making profits with a new flats that they'll be giving you as well. But whereas for VERS, it's going to be a voluntary where they're going to take a vote of multiple people living in that estate, and then they compensate them in a fair but modest area. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be just left with 20 years lease or 30 years lease. Generally, the compensation may not be so high per se also. So SERS, there's only 5%. For VERS, it's aimed to be wider because eventually all the HDB will return back to zero at the end of the day also. So let's look at what went wrong in SERS back in 2022 itself, because some flat owners are upset that they have to top up money for similar size replacement flat itself. So what went wrong? Block 562 to 565, they were announced for SERS in 2022. These were flats that is 43 years old, and they'll be given a replacement flat besides the ITE Ang Mo Kio itself. So with a fresh 99 years lease also. So the thing is that the residents are quite upset because they need to top up money for a similar size flat. Later I'll give you an example as well. So seniors, unlikely to get a loan, they have to consider downsizing to a smaller flat. And they also have the replacing a flat type doesn't always mean the same size. It could be a smaller flat in square footage area also. And those who recently renovated or those who just moved in, right, feels that they have to spend again and again itself. So it's not going to be easy for them also. So at the end of the day, for the compensation, it's really based on market value at the time of SERS. Because how much is it being compensated? The valuer will come down and value the house and compare with resale nearby transactions, and with the remaining lease and flat conditions and renovations, then they give them a value of the house also. After the valuer come and evaluate the house, right, this is what is the estimated compensation is going to be, but the replacement flat is slightly higher. And if you look at 4-room flat of 92 to 93 square meter, they'll be compensating 380 to 450. But the other new house of the same size will be at 438 to 563. So there is a need to top up. Unless you downgrade from a 4-room down to a 3-room, then you don't need to top up itself. And that's the frustrations behind the residents over there. They have to top up for something that is similar size itself. The reason given by the government is because the lease of this unit is shorter compared to the newer ones, it's longer. Whether residents need to top up is always based on what they have decided to buy. Whether they are right sizing means downsize from a 4-room to a 3-room or 4-room to a 2-room, or they are moving laterally means from the 4-room, or they are upgrading or choosing a different location. Well, for many Ang Mo Kio residents, at the end of the day, it's that they need to top up if they are going laterally or higher. Because the reasons like what I mentioned is that there's only left 57 years lease, and the new 99 years lease is much more expensive, which is quite a different story compared to last time, because last time the BTO prices are very similar to the resale prices then. But right now we are seeing a change in trend such that the BTO prices are higher compared to the resale parts, especially if your flat lease is a lot shorter right now. So if this is happening to SERS, what would happen if it is VERS? When it's going to be VERS next time, right, the lease of the flat is going to be left with 20 or 30 years lease left, which means to say that bank loan, they might not be able to get it. CPF usage, they might be restricted as well. So the value of the housing by then will be significantly shorter and smaller as well. So when your lease only left 20, what would the government compensate you might be a lot smaller. If they're going to rehouse you into a new 99 years lease property, the pricing will be a lot higher, which means to say the top up might be a lot bigger by then, which we are not sure right now. So it's something that only can be seen in 2030, 2032, and so on and so forth, because right now, as the filming of this video at 2025, we do not know exactly what is the details of the rehousing package next time. What would be the challenge the government will face by then? Let's stay tuned in the video. Later, I'll dive deeper into it. For the Ang Mo Kio SERS, there were a few solutions that was being proposed. So the first solution is that the residents are able to opt for a 50 years lease flat. It's cheaper because it suits for seniors who don't need the full 99 years lease. But the problem is that when they resell next time, they might face an issue, because the thing is that if right now you live until 50 and you live for 10 years, you have 40 years lease left. So you will have a block whereby some housing is 99 years, some housing will be left with 45 years or 40 years and so forth. So when you sell to the next buyer, we are also not sure right now how would it work by then. Would the buyer be able to buy a top up of lease from the government, or would the buyer be just buying the residual value of that 40 years? This is something I also not sure at the end of the day right now. So we have to take one step at a time and see what the government says from then on. Another option is that they do, for this Ang Mo Kio SERS residents, they do a lease buyback scheme for their current property. So they sell the part of their current property in their current flat, then they buy a shorter replacement flat in the new housing itself. So for lease buyback scheme model, when both owners pass away, the flat will return back to the government, and then they will prorate the remainder back to the beneficiary in a straight line depreciation method. Let's say, for example, they buy this house for 200,000 for, let's say, 20 years. Let's use a simple example. So each year the depreciation is $10,000. So if they stayed for 15 years, so their remaining value left 5 years will be 50,000. and the government will return them this 50,000 to their beneficiary. Something like how the COE works in our car context. So if you want to find out how this lease buyback works, I have a video down here. You can check it out over there. So what's the challenge for VERS? There are 3 challenges which I could think of. The first is lower lease, which have lower compensation value. Second, voting deadlocks in precincts. And third is rehousing bottlenecks and supply strain. So first, the lower lease and low value rights. At the end of that 20 and 30 years lease left, right, the valuation of the property might be very low because bank loans will be restricted, CPF usage will be restricted, which means to say that compensation may be just 100k or 150k, but the new flat could cost easily more than 300 to 400k itself. By the time that's another 5 years, 7 years, we do not know how the new HDB BTO pricing will work by then as well. So the question is, who pays the gap? Because at the end of the day, elderlies may not have enough savings or CPF, and the question is, wouldn't the VERS be a big difference of 2 to 300k? For example, they are compensated 100k, but a new flat costs 300k. So this 2 to 300k for a new flat with 99 years lease, who is going to pay for it? Do they have the funds to pay for it? This is something that is a big question mark also at the end of the day. So the key thing is that if they are left with just 20 years left and the compensation is only just 100k, and the new house is going to, difference is going to be 200k or more, when HDB builds this replacement flat, who is going to pay for it? It's surely going to be taxpayers' money, because at the end of the day, if they are not able to afford it, the government needs to rehouse them. The government also needs to put them in another place. Given that Singapore is a land-scarce city, when there is no other remainder flats right now, they have to rebuild it and rehouse them for that 20 years. When their 20 years is up, then new batch of owners could occupy these flats that is initially built for them. Then the question is, would the government be looking to sell this 79 years lease property when their 20 years is up? That's also another big question mark altogether also. So another challenge I can see is that voting deadlock, which means to say that because VERS is going to be voluntary, you need a majority consent. So there are different groups of people. Some elderly want quick exit, some middle-aged people want to wait, and young buyers feel that, I still need a place to stay, and I don't want the hassle and bustle of everything as well. So it might create a stalemate situations like what we see in all the private property en bloc situations, where some people want to en bloc, some people do not want to en bloc. They are not able to get the 80% threshold. Right now, we do not know what is going to be the percentage itself, but maybe next time things will be firmed up and we might see this kind of stalemates whereby people do not want to move, some people might want to move, and the government may have a hard time also. So another possible challenge at the end of the day is rehousing bottlenecks, meaning to say that there are multiple estates choosing VERS at the same time. There are tens of thousands suddenly need flat replacement flat at the end of the day. So the question is where to build and how to avoid long waiting time. I think this is one of the lesser challenge itself, because if the government is forward planning everything, generally I think they are able to do it staggeredly or do it step A, step B, step C at the same time, just like how they have started with the prime housing and eventually added plus housing itself. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I also not sure much about this because we do not have very concrete information about this as of now. I'm Caleb. See you. Goodbye.